Call the meeting to order. We'll start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
No, go ahead.
Thank you. Would you be so kind of do a roll?
I'd love to. Wade.
Here.
Darcy.
Here.
Nikki is here. Danielle. Here. Garrett.
Here.
Brandon.
Here.
Paige.
Here.
No absentees.
All right. Thank you.
Move to approve agenda? Second.
Motion's made to approve the agenda and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The agenda has been approved. And we will start with our first applicant tonight, and that is Jeremy Hill.
Good afternoon, guys.
Good afternoon.
Hi,
And Paige.
nice to meet you. Hi, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Darcy.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, guys. Everybody over there.
Jeremy, welcome.
Thank you.
Tonight, we're going to start a little bit with giving you a chance to talk a little bit about yourself, to give
Okay.
us an introduction to you then. And I think the first question will be by Danny down here. Once you're done giving us your introduction and just telling us who you are.
Perfect.
If you have questions, we have a lot of time at the end to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, sounds great.
All right, take it away.
Well, my name is Jeremy Hill. I am the principal of Willow Creek Elementary in Riverton, Wyoming. I'm finishing up my 28th year of education. I started as a secondary English teacher, speech and theater director, 7th grade volleyball coach, all of those things that kind of roll into what happens when you work in a smaller school district. I then moved to Texas, met my wife there, and she is from Corpus Christi. We had kids and were tugged to move back home to Wyoming. So I moved back to Wyoming as an assistant principal, leaving Texas as an assistant principal at a high school, and then moved back to Wyoming to be near my grandfathers. I wanted my kids to have that great-grandfather, great-grandparent experience. And so we moved back to Wyoming to where I grew up, and I was the high school assistant principal there, as well as activities director, which is a lot of work, as you know. And I kind of had the opportunity to then leapfrog my kids as they were growing up and became the elementary principal. I got to open a brand new building in 2016. And so that's where I currently am, is a principal of an elementary school there in Wyoming. My youngest will be a freshman at the University of Wyoming next year. My son will be a junior there. And it's time for mom and dad to go and maybe do something else. We're drawn to this community. Drive around, you can see how beautiful this community is, number one. But the inclusivity of the school district and the inclusivity of this community is important to us. My mother and father-in-law are no longer in Corpus Christi. They are in Onalaska. And my sister and brother-in-law work there. And in La Crosse, my sister-in-law works for Gunderson, and my brother-in-law is district attorney for that county there. So that's what's pulling us here. They have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. And as our kids are grown, it's time for us to get to be that fun aunt and uncle that take them to do incredible adventures. So that's what draws us to La Crescent.
Thank you.
I'm going to start with question number 1. How do you plan to support and enhance academic achievement across all grade levels?
So I think you have to start with the people who are delivering that academic achievement across grade levels. I am a distributive leader, and I say that to say that I am not the smartest man in the room. I will never pretend to be the smartest man in the room. And I know that my teachers, and if I'm your superintendent, that my administrative team is going to know way more about the kids and the teachers in their building than I'm going to know as the superintendent. But I want to spend time getting to know what that is that those kids need. Where are they academically? How are we going to grow them further? And I want the boots on the ground to help us figure out what those things are. I think there's this belief sometimes that a district administrator comes in and has all of the answers. I can tell you what I have seen work, and I can tell you what I have seen not work, but I truly, truly, truly trust the experience and the knowledge and the background of the people that are in classrooms with kids, because they know way more about those kids that are in front of us than we are. There's always a joke that your veteran teachers, your teachers that have been teaching forever, have laminated lesson plans, and they go and they pull them out and they use them from year to year. That could not be further from the truth. Those veteran teachers adjust what they're doing every day based on the kids that are in front of them. And those kids that are in front of them are not the same kids that were in front of them last year, that were in front of their colleagues last year, because there are life experiences for those kids along the way. The focus of this district in thinking about those desired daily experiences for kids, that's what you're talking about. You're talking about what each kid should get each day when they come into your buildings. And you have to take the time to build the systems to support and enhance the academic achievement there. When you look at the graduation rates of La Crescent Hoka, those are pretty incredible. I come from a very diverse school district right in the heart of Wyoming, on the Native American reservation, and we're fighting a lot of different battles, but our focus still is kids. The focus of this school district, your mission says it all. The needs of students come first, not the needs of the adults in the room, not the needs of stakeholders, though all of those things are pieced together. We think about the needs of the kids first, and we build systems that help us support and enhance the academic achievement of those kids that are in front of us right now. So I would start a conversation with our teaching staff to figure out what those kids need, and then we would make a plan to enhance them. I look at some of your test scores, and the first thing that jumps out to me is, what do we do different in math? How do we bring our math scores up in line with our reading and science scores? And then how do we take everything and push that a little bit further? My experience tells me that when we build continuums of intervention, in other words, what do kids learn in kindergarten that moves them to first grade, that moves them to second grade, that moves them to third grade? When we dig into the data, what does it tell us about the spaces in between, those gaps where kids fall short? That's what our focus should be, is how we spiral all of those pieces together. And in a district this size, what an incredible opportunity to look at that early childhood through 12th grade. You guys have some great systems in place. I would want to learn all about them, and then let's talk about how you think that we can make them better, and then how I can support you as we do that.
Thank you.
How would you address bullying and ensure a safe and inclusive school environment further?
That's a hard question, not knowing the specifics of a certain situation, but I believe in zero tolerance for bullying. I don't think anybody's going to sit in this chair last Friday or tonight and say to you, 75% is okay. Nobody's ever going to say that. we should have a zero tolerance for bullying. And what you have to do is spend time in the very, very beginning with families and with kids and come from a restorative perspective. When relationships are broken through bullying or through altercations that happen in classrooms or on football fields or in locker rooms, when those relationships are broken, you have to take the time to rebuild them so that you create that empathy among your stakeholders so that they know that that's just not something that we tolerate here. When we talk about the desired daily experiences, you guys talk about inclusivity for your students, you talk about it for your staff, and you talk about it for your family too. That is very, very clearly an expectation of this school district. And it should be. It should be an expectation of school districts across our country, especially in this day and age with social media when we get wrapped up in things that are real and things that are not real, they still spill out into our schools. And they spill out younger and younger and younger. And you guys know that as administrators. We're seeing those things happen at earlier times. We have to make sure that we are proactive from the beginning, and our first focus is on rebuilding relationships. Second to that, there has to be an accountability and a consequence that goes with that continuous bullying that happens over time. And if you don't address that from a consequential standpoint, the chances are that it will come back. But you certainly have to address it from a human standpoint. And the bully has to understand what it feels like to be bullied. And typically many of them have been bullied. But they have to understand and have empathy for the person that they are targeting, or we're never going to turn the tide with that. So when you talk about a district that's focused on social emotional learning, that would certainly be my focus as well. We would make sure that we are creating those empathetic opportunities for students and families to learn from each other.
With the knowledge of budget concerns that our district is facing, tell me your experience in dealing with similar situations and how you would handle these upcoming challenges.
Well, I think that given the pandemic 5 years ago, given ESSER funding and CARES funding that came from that and that economic boost to school districts across the country, we had to make some decisions about where we spent our money. Did we spend our money on things? Did we spend our money on people? Did we spend our money on systems? One of the questions that I would have for all of you and that I would have for your administrative team and that I would have for other stakeholders is, where did La Crescent Hoka spend their money? And what did they determine were the best opportunities for success using that money? Because now that money is gone, we are all faced with, how do we make ends meet? And what do we do? If you read my application packet and you read philosophically about me, I believe that we take the best of what we do and we replicate it at all levels when we can. And we eliminate those pieces that cross over that maybe don't get us the biggest bang for the buck when we look overall at what our data tells us that we should do. So I think that you have to put all of those pieces together to make those decisions. The school district that I'm in had an early childhood center that was pre-K, kindergarten boost, and kindergarten. Then those kids transitioned to 3, 1, 2, 3 buildings. Then they came back together in a 4, 5 intermediate building, and then a 6, 7, 8, and a 9, 10, 11, 12, which is typically expected. We determined, as we knew that money was starting to go and that our population was shifting a little bit, that we needed to rethink what we were doing. And so we redistributed students and we reorganized our schools to be pre-K 12, pre-K 5 on 3 campuses. So we eliminated 2 campuses in doing that. That took a lot of effort. It took patience. It took admitting when we made bad choices, because sometimes we did. We moved the wrong teachers, or we moved the wrong kids, or we didn't preserve the right programs, but we did it in such a slow manner that we could correct ourselves when the course was not correct. So that would be my experience as far as how we made major budget savings that way. This is a different situation here because what would you eliminate? What building would you eliminate? What grade level would you eliminate? You wouldn't. But you would start to consider other ways that you have some crossover opportunities for people to work in multiple levels, or for kids to experience opportunities with similar or adjacent grade bands of kids to be able to try to save some money. And again, I would go to the people who live here and I would say, what do you think? How do we do that? How do we get there?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And excuse my voice, and this is kind of a long one. What are some ways that you plan to build trust and engagement between community members, taxpayers, and the school that allows for continued growth of the school, respect for or of teachers and staff, and continued support for public education?
Well, in order for me to build trust and heighten engagement, you have to see me engaged in our community. You have to see me at football games. You have to see me at theater productions and band performances. You need to see me at county fair. You need to see me actively engaged in the community. And our stakeholders need to know that when I'm not wearing a suit and a Lancer green tie, that they still get to approach me wherever I am. I'm not, as your superintendent, I don't just work Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. I work as your superintendent 24 hours a day, 366 days out of the year, and there aren't that many, but that's because I don't get to take any off. I'm constantly in that opportunity, or putting myself in those opportunities to engage people in our conversations. I build trust by telling you what I'm going to do and then doing it. I don't tell you guys one thing sitting at a board meeting and then go to my administrative team and say, hold up, this is what they wanted us to do, but this is how we're going to do it. My answer is going to be consistent, it's going to be transparent, and it's going to be with students at the focus of what we do. We'll have hard conversations. We'll disagree on the direction maybe that we need to go. But when you say to me, this is the direction that we need to go, then I will turn to them and say, this is the direction that we need to go. How do we get there? I will not play two sides against each other, because that is not healthy for any school. It's also not healthy for communities. It's not healthy for families. It's not healthy for work teams. It's not healthy for anything. So I will build that trust by being transparent and honest and consistent in my answer. I won't have to remember what I said, because I will always say the same thing, and I will always tell the truth.
Thank you.
Tell us about academic success, how you define it and how you achieve it.
Well, I think the state of Minnesota would want to tell us that academic success is determined by their state test. And as teachers, we would look at our screeners like FastBridge, and we would also consider the state test. And that would help us maybe determine the direction of academic achievement. But truly, academic achievement is measured by whether or not kids can do the things that we ask them to do in the time frame that we ask them to do it. And when they can't, what are we doing about that? As somebody who believes in the professional learning community model, we ask our staff to answer 4 questions about kids. What do we want them to know? How will we know that they know it? What will they do? What will we do if they don't know it? And what will we do to extend them if they do? That's truly how you measure academic success. You do it in small teams that are digging into data to determine all of the things that tell us about kids being successful. It doesn't just happen on a state test. It happens in the trenches, in teacher meetings, and as they come and they report to their administrators, and those administrators come and report to you, we'll talk about what that looks like overall. When you consider that world's best workforce piece that the state says that everybody has to do, and the goals that you all have set for that, there are some areas that you identify as not making those gains or not meeting those achievement levels. Some of that is kindergarten readiness. And goodness, that's one of the most difficult things to wrap your head around, because before there's a compulsory age of attendance, how do you engage families in understanding that their kiddos need to be kindergarten ready before they come into our kindergarten classrooms? That would be something that we would focus on, and we would start there when we're looking long range about academic success. The next one is third grade reading, and you guys would also say that third grade reading is one of those things that you don't feel as though it's where you want it to be. And your test scores would probably back that up a little bit. But what's interesting is that's one measure on one day. Sometimes there's a second day, sometimes there's a third day. It just depends on what the state system says. But that's one measure of a kid. It's not the big picture of a kid. It's not the body of evidence of what a kid can or cannot do. So we would spend time looking at our systems and making sure that we give every kid what they need when they need it on a continuum of skills. That's how we're going to determine academic success. Your graduation rate shows academic success. But what's interesting to me, and what I would dig into, is if your third grade scores on one state test are saying one thing, yet 9 years later, 98% of your kids are graduating, you're doing something right. The state test isn't how we uncover that. We spend time digging into what that looks like at every grade level or band of students to determine what that looks like over time and how we push all kids to that level of learning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, describe a time you had to make a difficult decision that impacted the entire school district. What factors did you consider? How did you communicate the decision? And what were the outcomes?
So I think I would go back to the most difficult decision that I've had to make is leading that process of reconfiguration for our school district. And I'm one of 5 principals that were doing that, but I'm also the most veteran of that set of principals too. And often in my district, I'm the mediator, I'm the moderator, I'm the guy that goes into a hard conversation and listens to what both sides have to say and truly try to guide everybody to a reasonable conclusion that most of us can wrap our heads around, because I think that that's my job. I think that that's that leadership quality that I bring to teams is distributing those decisions among everybody so that we all have ownership in that. When we decided to reconfigure, we had to determine whether we were going to go neighborhood school or whether we were going to continue to stay district schools. And it's not a very big community. It's a community of 10,000. We have 2,500 students. But what was important to me is that the flavor of our school district looked the same in every building. You can drive around La Crescent and see that there are different pockets of wealth. There are different pockets in neighborhoods where kiddos live. And the beauty of a district like this is all those kids go to the same school. That's the equalizer in that. And it was important to me when we reconfigured our schools that we still had an equalizer, that all of our schools were still Title I schools, that all of our schools still had wealthy families and involved parents, that all of our schools had kids that could walk and kids that were bused. That was important to us because we knew that that preserved the flavor of our school, which preserved and emulated maybe the flavor of our community. You can't build empathy in a community if your schools don't look like your community. And so that was a major, major focus for us when we reconfigured. It was difficult. My school scores on average 20 points higher than the other schools in our district, and we're right at the state average. And I attribute that to the work of my teachers and the work of our academic teams. But I also remind everybody that we have the same kids that everybody else has. The difference is, how do they feel when they walk in your building? The difference is, how do you meet them where they are? The difference is, what do you do to push them further? All of those pieces are important. And when you make a mistake because you put the wrong kids in the wrong classroom, or the wrong, your pickup time doesn't coincide with other things that are happening in the community, you have to own that, and you have to say, that's on us. How do we fix this? Let's problem solve together around how we fix this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I guess I should finish that up too. I took a breath there and looked back at the question. How did we communicate that? We communicated that early and often. We sent messages using we use ThrillShare, which is a pushes out those community notifications. We worked with the newspaper, we were on the radio, we had community forums. We communicated that all different ways because not all of our families learn the news on Facebook. Some do. We have to make sure that we talk about that, but we also have to make sure that we sit in coffee shops and talk to stakeholders as well. We have to do all of that.
Great, thank you. Question number 7, suppose test scores are flat, the budget's tight, staff energy is low. It's your job to set a vision that inspires action and hope. How do you lead through that moment, and what kind of story do you tell to move the district forward?
Well, that looks like a question that was written in March or April, because that's certainly how teachers and administrators and even parents feel after spring break a little bit. But I think there's a lot of different pieces to that question there. When test scores are flat, I think that you have to have the conversation that test scores are only just one indication of whether or not a school is successful. Test scores can be flat, but that doesn't mean that they're stagnant forever. And when you look at that slow trajectory over time of your school district, you're growing in all of those areas. Are you growing at the level that you want to grow them? Maybe not. Are you growing them at the level that your administrative team wants them? Probably not. But I can guarantee you that your teacher team on the other side of that is most concerned about the pace of that growth. Right? They're the ones that are with those kids all day, every day. They're the ones that look at that and take that flat personally. So I think you tell the story that, listen, we're all in this together. That isn't on you. That isn't on your shoulders solely. What does your collaborative team say about that? And where are you good? And where can you improve? And where can somebody else step in and work their magic with kids in a place that you're falling short to grow you as a staff? I think that's how you tell the story, is that we're all in this together. The budget is tight. That certainly is not an uncommon conversation to have. But this time of year too, budgets are tight. You're finishing up your fiscal year. You're trying to determine what you can afford to buy now going into next year. You make strategic decisions as an administrator about what you can buy, what you shouldn't buy, what you can wait to buy. All of those things factor into the morale of your staff. And that's what brings that energy low. But I think that if you hire me, you will find that I will always be the cheerleader. Not because my daughter is a cheerleader and wants to be a cheerleader at the University of Wyoming, which is another story for another day, but I will be that guy that stands in front of the staff and stands in front of the community and says, we're dealing with today. We're focused on today in the way that we feel right now. But let's turn our focus to tomorrow. And what are the opportunities for tomorrow? How do we get to tomorrow? What will we be proud of tomorrow? What will get us ready going forward?
Great, thank you. You discovered a long-time Wall-like staff member has been underperforming in ways that impact students. How do you handle the situation, and what's your process for addressing the issue while respecting their legacy and maintaining staff morale?
I think your question in a lot of ways answers itself, right? Because you handle the situation and you address it in a way that discusses the legacy and maintaining their personal morale as a staff member. I think that this would probably not be a conversation that I'm having alone. I might be having the last conversation. I might be having the bigger picture conversation about that, but I've discovered that because an administrator has told me that, right? I'm hearing about it second or third hand, and I think that the most important thing to do is to spend time with that staff member. And my first question needs to be, how's it going? What's going on? Catch me up. Help me understand how you got to the place that you are. We can look at our mission and say that the needs of students come first. And truly, we're in the business of building kids. But I'm going to challenge you to think a little bit differently here. We're in the business of building everybody. We're not just in the business of building kids. We're in the business of building our staff too. If we don't build our staff, they can't build kids. So I would look at a longtime, well-liked staff member who's underperforming in ways that impact students, and I would be frank about that conversation. I believe that the most powerful growth conversation that you can have with a staff member is one that they discover their own shortcomings. If you line up all of your staff and you say, who's good, who doesn't need any professional development? Sometimes it's your brand new teachers that are the ones that raise their hand. They're still so wide-eyed about everything coming out of school that they truly believe they've got this. When you say, who needs an extra hand, who needs some help, who needs some time, who needs some professional development, your veteran teachers are the first ones to jump up and down because they know the value of that. They've seen it work. So I think you have to have empathy when you go into a conversation with that longtime well-liked staff member. You have to be honest, you have to be sincere, and you have to make a plan going forward. And if they don't want to do that, if they don't want to improve, then you have a hard conversation with them about when they're ready to be done or what they're ready to do next. And those are hard conversations, but if you have them with empathy and you're transparent and honest in the way that you handle those, that's always better.
Thank you.
Tell us about a time you improved the special education services and programming, and how did you do that?
Before we reconfigured, we were the school in our district that had medically fragile kiddos. We also had the highest of behavior need kids. When we reconfigured and wanted all of our schools to look the same, we spread that out. But along the way, we made it a focus of ours to make sure that we provided opportunities for special education and students that were receiving special education services to get the same things that every other kid got. Fair is not always the same. Fair is, what does the kid in front of you right now need to level the playing field next to the other kids? And so when you're talking about special education, that should always be, I think, the lens that you use. I had a meeting last week with a mom whose daughter, she's a second grader, the daughter is a second grader, and she started at our school today. And here I am in Minnesota. So we had to make sure that we planned for what that was going to look like for our kiddo, and especially what that was going to look like for our mom. This student has been on a 504 for incredible anxiety and ADHD. And she's a second grader, so 7. So 5 years ago, at the age of 2, this kiddo did not make a natural break from her mom when you do at 2 years of age because of the pandemic. So this kid has a very heightened need for adult attention and adult approval, and single mom, one daughter, we're dealing with a lot of dynamics that are there. But every place this mom has gone in our district, and at every turn she's been met with, your daughter doesn't need anything. Your daughter is going to be just fine. She doesn't need anything. Mom goes home at night, and what does she think? The school district doesn't care. That principal doesn't care. Nobody's listening to me. So the special ed director and the assistant superintendent determined that that student was going to come to my school. They have finished the manifestation determination, and so she's ready to have an IEP put in place. We'll phase out the 504, and we'll start her in a behavior support program, because what that kiddo needs is that structure, that check-in, that check-out with an adult to tell her, you've got this, kiddo. That says to her, if you need to stand up to do that work, stand up. She doesn't need a teacher saying, sit down. Why are you standing up? Sit down. How many times do I need to tell you to sit down? That kiddo needs to be able to stand up. And we're gonna let her do that. So mom comes in and sits down with my staff last week, because I knew I was going to be gone, and I wanted my principal intern, who's covering for me, to be able to have a relationship with mom too. And I said to the mom, I said, talk to me about your journey as a parent in our district. And as you can imagine, mom burst into tears. And I said, I didn't ask you that question because I wanted to make you cry. I asked that question because I wanted to make you feel valued. If you haven't been heard along the way, then you haven't gotten what you believe you need for your kid. We finished that conversation. My new the teacher who will have this new student or had this new student today was there. My social worker was there. My school nurse was there because the kiddo takes meds. The whole team comes together to make sure that we are setting an opportunity for this kid to be successful in our building. Is she gonna have a hard time? Possibly. Are we gonna love her through it? Absolutely, because that's our job.
Thank you.
you.
La Crescent Hoka has made significant investments in its facilities in recent years, but resources are always limited. How do you evaluate facility needs, both urgent and long-term, while balancing a restricted budget? Can you walk us through your decision-making processes and how you prioritize projects?
Sure. When we built the school that I am in 2016, the state of Wyoming came in and we did a Mercer study to determine whether or not we had too much square footage, what our projected enrollment was going to be. That was long before we knew COVID was going to probably wipe some of those things out. But we took the time to walk square foot by square foot to determine what we had and what our needs were. You can drive around and see. I could look online all last week and in the times leading up to my application at your school district and see those improvements. They're incredible. The pictures are beautiful, but truly sitting in a new space, that's where it all comes together for me as a prospective superintendent for you guys. We would take the time to listen to what the state tells us we need to do financially. I would seek your input on what you guys think that you need to do. And I would imagine that what you would say to me is, ask your administrative team, ask your teachers what they think. So then I would go to my administrative team and we would make a plan to meet with our teachers and talk through what that should and could look like. And then we would come back to you. We would spend time with stakeholders, the people who are paying the taxes, and that includes all of us in the room, everybody that is living in this district, right? We would talk through what those circumstances are and what we thought the best course of action is. I think it's also important that you determine plan A, plan B, plan C, because school finance changes so quickly sometimes, depending on legislatures, depending on the U.S. Department of Education, all of those things that are a little up in the air for us right now. We have to have a plan B or C to determine what we need to do differently should something change drastically and quickly. If you look at the financial state of your district, I think that you guys are in a good place to hold where you need to hold, but that doesn't mean that you don't make difficult decisions as you go. So we would walk those buildings, we would look at them, we would look at ways that we can save money. And I think, there's research out there that says if you go to school 4 days, that saves you so much money. The reality of that is it doesn't, because you're still running the heat on those days that you're not in there, and you're not using the heat that you're running in your buildings on the days that you're not in there. So there are other ways to do that, and I think that you would find that I'm creative when it comes to having those conversations. I love when you look at the vision statements that you guys have laid out. There are 5 of them, but your third one, I think, speaks to all of them because it calls for creativity, continuous improvement, resilience in the face of budget shortfalls, and a growth mindset. Where do we go from here? What do we do differently? I think when you consider that third statement in your vision statement, that it truly speaks to the strength and to the focus of this school district.
Thank you.
Sorry. Please share your thoughts on how districts should hold themselves accountable for academic progress, improvement, and what steps should be taken when benchmarks are not met. Please give an example.
Well, I think it goes back to that honest and transparent conversation that you have with stakeholders, that I will have with you as my board, that I will have with my administrative team, that I will have with my teaching staff. I think that you are honest and you are straightforward in that, and you hold, as the superintendent, you hold yourself most accountable, because if we aren't implementing systems that show academic growth, that falls squarely on me. Squarely on me as the chief instructional officer of the district. Because it means that I haven't communicated your wishes with our administrators, and I haven't held our administrators accountable to communicating those wishes with your teachers, and we haven't held those conversations with families. But I hope that we're never in that situation, because you're going to hold me accountable, and I'm going to hold the rest of the staff accountable, because we have to grow. We never should get to a point where we say, okay, that's good enough. We're good enough. We should never be at that place. We should always want to get ourselves better. You asked for an example of what you do in those situations. I will go back to one of the things that I said earlier. I believe in the professional learning community model, and that's your kids are my kids. They're all our kids. I don't just have 16 to 20 kids in my classroom that I'm responsible for. I'm responsible for the kids coming up. I'm responsible for the kids that I pass on. We are all in it for all kids. And I have that conversation with my staff all the time. And I love it when they parrot me and they say it to each other. When they say it to people who come into the building and say something about, well, you and your kids, and my teachers will correct them and say, oh, no, they're our kids. They're all our kids. We're all in this together. We're all responsible for the growth of our kids together. So I think that you have to be able to stand in front of the media. I think you have to be able to stand in front of the school board. I think you have to be able to stand in front of your teaching staff when they come back in the first day of staff development prior to Labor Day and say, look, here's where we are. That's on us, guys. And here's what we need to do. And here's what we need to do. You know, that's maybe the best example that I can share with that, because I don't think that those are ever conversations that you want to be in, and they're not conversations that I have found myself in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last question. What is the superintendent's role in the broader community?
I think the superintendent's role in the broader community is to always represent the best interest of the district, to always speak highly of the district, to always speak highly of the staff in the district, of the students, of our successes, to be able to say, when somebody says to you, gosh, I can't believe that you guys lost that football playoff, to be able to look at that person and say, didn't those kids work hard? Man, those boys worked hard. Just wasn't in the cards. But you don't say, oh, I know, I wish they'd have won it too. Of course I wish they would have won it too. I flew out early yesterday morning, and I felt pretty good about Duke's chances when I shut off the TV.
Same.
And that's not the way that that played out, right? And you can read all the things about Con Kneppel and Cooper Flag, but I'll tell you what, those are young men, barely 17, barely 18. Gave all their guts that night in that game, and it didn't work out for them. It didn't work out for them. But you never talk badly about them. You always say, boy, didn't our boys work hard? Didn't our girls in the volleyball team work hard? That's my broader role in the community. We want, not that there's a lot of houses for sale, but we want people to move here. We want to preserve our way of life, but we also want people to move here and see how great it is. We want to embrace those families when they get here that change the flavor of our community and provide the very best opportunity for their kids. That's my job. That is my job, because the more people we have here, the more income we have as a school district, and the more we can do with it. And that's not to say that I would want to move here and change that trajectory and all of a sudden turn into a large school district. I think that's the beauty of this, is it's not that. It is not that. This is small town America, and we should preserve that way of life because we don't have that everywhere anymore. And it's a fleeting idea, but we should preserve it as we can. And you would see me standing in front of groups of people talking about how great we have it here and how hard we work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions for us?
I do have some questions for you. Why a boy from Wyoming? What made you, in what I can imagine was an incredible group of applicants, what made you look at that and say, let's listen to what this guy has to say. Let's take a chance on this one.
That's a really good question.
I thought you told a good story with the cover letter. You had a reason to want to be over here. You've been there for a long time. You've had you had stability. I thought your resume was well laid out. It was very easy to read. I like that. And so we started at that together. And I think, again, the story you told in the cover letter about what you want to do, that's why you're here tonight. My opinion.
Thank you.
I second that. Yeah. You had a great letter.
Well, I believe that. You know, I'm looking for a school district to move to. My wife is an educator as well. I taught and been in education for 28 years, and finding a place to retire and retire close to family, I think is important to me. And so I appreciate that opportunity to be that guy from Wyoming that you took some time to get to know. When you think about your leadership profile and those 6 pieces that you lay out there, and then you look at that resume that you talked about, where do you, and I don't know who all has been able to see that, I don't know if the rest of the team has been able to see that as well, but when you look at that, where are you concerned that I maybe fall short?
I think one of the things is not having a superintendent experience, but in the same respect, you have a lot of experience in education that you can bring to the table.
Right.
And I think sometimes that can get lost with superintendent experience. So it's nice to see that. And that was one of the other pieces that made me vote for
Well, thank
to
you.
be a candidate.
And I think that is important, right? Because I'm not so far removed from the classroom, and I'm not so far removed from the principal office. And when I step in as a superintendent, I'm going to be kind of in that middle ground a little bit, where I remember what it's like to sit in the seats that these guys are sitting in. And I remember what it's like to have been in the classroom. I would agree with you that not having superintendent experience, I think on paper puts me at a disadvantage. But I'm not the only one without superintendent experience that you guys
That is
chose to
correct.
interview in this group, right?
Mhm.
But I think that knowing that I have elementary and secondary experience, that I have worked across the district building those opportunities for myself, knowing that this was a goal for me and something that I wanted to be able to do as I wind down my career, I think, I hope speaks to that as well.
School finance.
Okay. Yeah, I think that school finance is one of those things that is definitely something that when you look on paper would be worrisome a little bit. But I come from a background in school districts where we get to be not the chief financial officer, but those deputy financial officers to understand how all of those pieces fit together. I will lean on the financial expertise of district leaders in this school district to bring me up to speed so that when I'm making decisions and I'm making those collaboratively, that I'm making them with solid understanding of the financial systems in the state of Minnesota. That will be something that is important to me. In working with the folks over in Moorhead to try to determine kind of all of those last pieces. I'm certified in the state of Wyoming as a superintendent. I'm certified in the state of Wisconsin, but they constantly remind me that Minnesota is different. Minnesota is harder to get certified in. I know that I will have to take a school finance course through them to be able to meet those requirements of the state of Minnesota. So I would freshly know those pieces that you want.
How long does it take to get that?
It's a course this summer. Yeah, I would be finished with it by the time we get
I
started.
think it's only like 5 weeks,
Yeah.
isn't it?
It is a quick course. Yes. And I think that's a fair concern for you to have, Eric. I think that when you look on paper, that certainly could be worrisome to you guys. But I'm a farm kid. I know what it's like to not have the money that you need to get going into that next season. And I'm creative in figuring out how to do that. And so I would work very, very closely with our staff here to make sure that you guys spend right down to the penny. I think you are reserving $45 maybe going into the next year when you look at what these numbers look like. So you guys are good at that, and I would trust you to help lead me through that.
I think this is the biggest question. Are you a Packers or Vikings?
Gosh. Well, if you
It's not a protected class, so.
and I would tell you that I am, gosh.
You're a Cowboy fan. You can just say
Don't
it.
say
You
it.
can say it.
Don't worry, there's no pressure.
There is,
You
clearly, I'm in
Your job doesn't.
pasture laser green a little bit here, but you know what? I'm a Bills fan because Josh Allen is a University of Wyoming kid, and that's where both of my boys are.
They're the Vikings, they have. It's fine.
true.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that's fair.
Both, we're tied, 0-4. All right, good answer. All right.
Well,
I appreciate that question.
Any other questions for?
I don't have any other questions
All right.
for you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Thank you. I
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
your time.
Thanks for traveling.
Well, I'll try to take this Wyoming wind back with me, okay?
That'd be wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank
What time is it?
15 minutes. We'll do 15.
I motion for a 15-minute recess.
I'll second.
Thank
Excuse
you.
me.
Sorry.
Nope,
Nope, you're good.
Thank you.
Drive safe, fly safe.
We will take a 15-minute recess. They already voted for it.
I can't hear you, Wade.
You heard me, you didn't hear that.
You got these all done? Yeah, it was here when I checked. Yep, I checked my boxes this time.
Well, congratulations. That's great.
That's funny. Yeah, so that was cool.
That's great news.
I brought one too.
Did you really?
I know.
I knew it was gonna be a long night, so I
Probably.
I don't drink enough water. I am comfortable.
Why they choose me to lose that?
Well.
Okay. Yeah.
I am kind of like a cat. I mean, my blood volume is probably